Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. It just seems like a desecration.
Hello, and welcome to Charlotte's Web, Johnny Vedmore.
Hello, how are you? It's a lovely colour you got round here.
Oh, thank you. It's a fuchsia, magenta, what would you call it?
Pinky purple.
Pinky purple. So, for those who may not know who you are, Johnny, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, it's complicated. Well, I was someone, I mean, for years I was just a musician, working in hotels mostly, you know, rocking out as much as possible. But then about 2015, 16, kind of went through a little bit of a change that led me down the path of journalism, and of course led me to be looking into things that other people were a little bit afraid to talk about or were staying away from. And I discovered that I'd already been a researcher for years. I'd just been looking on websites and stuff. I'd been looking into archives. I'd been really getting the information myself. And I started to work out that I knew things other people didn't know about stuff. And then that one thing led to another. And it turns out I'm quite a good investigative journalist. I can find information. I can think outside the box, you could say. I can try, you know, I can see things that maybe other people aren't interested in following. And also I don't stop on a certain point and tell that story. I tell the whole story. The way I work is I write down everything I can find in chronological order, and the story tells itself. And then my job at the end is to sum up the story. So I'm an investigative journalist. I worked for different platforms. I worked for Unlimited Hangout with Whitney Webb. I worked for Vocal Media, or at least published on their UK column. And I got my own platform called Newspaste, where I also have the Newspaste podcast. And I have a show called Truth Bomb, which of course is a quiz show. And I do loads of music and other stuff too. And I go on lots of people's podcasts and I talk. My research is in depth, sourced up the wazoo. I don't publish anything that can't be proven, and I prove it inside the article. You want to argue with my reasoning? Go look for the line that I say, find what that line is and what it is in context to. Look for the link, go into the link, and see you'll have the proof of the thing that happened that is said within that line. What I do is I prove things, and I prove things that other people don't want to prove, because it'll bring loads of crap right to their doorstep, and they'll be censored up the wazoo, just like I get censored up the wazoo. So I'm now someone who's, one of my main tasks at the moment is fighting a massive array of censorship that's been going on for 6 years across multiple platforms by some of the biggest, most richest, and most powerful people in the world, who are directly denying reality so they can make me look like some form of evil conspiracy theorist, rather than anybody actually look at my evidence. They use strategic warfare against public participation to silence my voice constantly. They censor nearly every single thing I do. Even music, Ditto Music have even recently refused to release Evil Israeli War Machine, Genocide Edition. Now, we could have argued about the name a little bit, maybe, to get round the problems, but some of the actual communications are bizarre, off the wall. I have to deal with censorship all of the time. So that's what I do. I look into the cases no one else wants to look into, because it'll just bring too much crap to you.
So just the short intro then, yeah, Johnny?
Yeah, that's it. That is a short intro. Shit, if I told you the detail in between, I think your brain would fall out. It's complicated stuff happened in my life.
No, all good stuff, And I think the first time I came across you was when you used to go on to Jason Bermas's show a few years ago, when you were uncovering the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, and I think that's what we're going to circle our show around today. In fact, let's call it "What is Epstein?" So not who is Epstein, what is Epstein? Should we go from there?
Yeah. Where do you want me to start? Do you want me to tell you exactly what Epstein was?
I think you could, yeah. If you answer that particular question, it can be in depth, and then we'll steer it into where we're able to go.
Okay. Well, this is the first time I've properly said this out loud, and this is really important to understand. Everything seems like Jeffrey Epstein was this or that without context applied. When you put context to it, you get a lot more. When I was researching for One Nation Under Blackmail, Volume 1 and 2, little bits in Volume 1, mainly Volume 2, I got to see a whole lot about the Epstein case. I was deep within reading chapters, reading the research firsthand, going and looking at the evidence. And it was only after a load of, finding a load of uncomfortable truths did I really get to the end of the story in my mind of what Epstein actually was. Epstein was a facet of the Republican Party that was aligned with the CIA. That may sound crazy at first because he, of course, was choosing Democratic Party leadership candidates and the technocratic leaders of the future, and he was running guns and doing all of these things as well. But Epstein was recruited by the CIA in the late 70s, early 80s. However many links he has with Mossad, most people will bring up stuff that happened in the late 80s, and that's not the start of Epstein's career. At the start of Epstein's career, he was helping funding the running of guns in Iran-Contra. And Iran-Contra, of course, was something that was set up by the CIA. In actual fact, the people who actually originally set up the idea and came to the CIA with the idea of Iran-Contra was Cyrus Hashemi and J. Stanley Pottinger. J. Stanley Pottinger was one of Epstein's victims' lawyers. Put that through your head. He also shared an office and admitted sharing an office with Epstein. To his business partner, Bradley Edwards, he said he shared an office with Epstein in the early 80s. This is the same time J. Stanley Pottinger was working for the CIA, and he was also working alongside George H.W. Bush to get him into office after he had just been the head of the CIA. Let me explain something to you. Since the moment that JFK's head got blown off his shoulders, the moment that, well, that's a bit of a too far, but the moment that he died, that was the Republicans and the CIA both taking charge, because the Republicans had got to the point where they were the CIA, and they needed to make sure that the opposition's leaders were under control. And late 80s, early 90s, there's a lot of interaction between Israel and America on how to do such things. In the late 60s, a lot of exposés happened about the CIA, and they had to reform. They had to reform using non-governmental organizations and arms and offshoots and other things. And the CIA really was hiding behind all of these things. And we all know it. We all know USAID and a lot of the NGOs were set up by the Central Intelligence Agency. Now, during this time in the late 80s, they're puzzling over a new form of politics called third way politics. That politics would be introduced by Bill Clinton and Tony Blair in America and Britain, respectively. Bill Clinton in 1992, when he's running for president, says, "I'm the first third way politician," leaving the left behind, moving over to the center, the CIA center, may I say, because he was also working in Iran-Contra. I mean, Bill Clinton was helping with the funding of and covering up the funding of the Contra side of Iran-Contra, where Epstein was involved in running guns to Iran during the same time. So they're both working on CIA programs, running guns for Iran-Contra in different capacities. By 1992, 1993, he gets into office, of course, and Epstein visits Bill Clinton 17 times. That's 17 times over 2 years. And this is really the moment where he's becoming the guy who's going to choose the Democratic Party leaders on behalf of a Republican-aligned CIA and make sure that everybody was in line. And really, I think what Epstein was the Republican-aligned CIA taking over the left wing of American politics bringing it into the comfortable center ground of third way politics that leads to technocratic globalism, and setting Jeffrey Epstein up to choose the Democratic Party leaders and align them, compromise them if necessary, on behalf of the CIA. While, and everybody will say, I will hear the ringing voices out saying, but he was only Mossad, he was only Israel, he was only this. America and Israel totally aligned. Israel is the 51st state of America. Everything. If America did not protect Israel, Israel would not exist. Just as Texas or somewhere else would be taken over by some other army which is bigger and bolder if America didn't protect it naturally in lots of different ways and fund it. Israel, as Nahum Goldman put it, was the strategic military center for world domination, one of the leading Zionists. He said it himself. It's why they needed Israel, because America needs to make sure they have a very good friend right at the center of the strategic military control for world domination, access to every single continent that America is not next to, the borders that America is not next to. So Epstein was a complicated thing. He was so many things. He was choosing the technocratic leaders through EDGE, through the science foundations in the 90s and the noughties. He's people who were going through his training courses are Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Salah Kamanga, all of the boys, Sergey Brin, all of them. Evan Williams, who was the head of Twitter, they're all there. They're all there. Only the top bosses learning or things like how to manipulate people by using social media in 2008, 2009, 2010, funded fully by Jeffrey Epstein. He was choosing the leaders. He was a leadership person, and he was making sure they were aligned with the CIA, and the CIA was already aligned with the Republican Party that was already in control of the Democratic Party. And that was Epstein's job, to make sure that the leaders of the Democratic Party were aligned with the Republican CIA.
Some people may be watching this, Johnny, and going, but I watched the Netflix documentary about Epstein and that wasn't mentioned in there.
Oh, no. I know they don't actually go back to this. I love a lot of people who are in this sort of media sphere, but the deeper you go, the more you see, and the more you realize there's context to everything that's involved. Every single thing in the Epstein operation has context. You can't just say, there's a big effort to make him just a pedophile, child trafficking, disgusting no-mark that you don't want to even hear his name anymore, because the thought of it will make you think of just child stuff and all of that sort of stuff, and you'll be like, oh, that's awful, don't let me hear it anymore. It's put up to you by people who have been carefully, if you know names in entertainment, I think you know this fully well, all of the people who are known up top, all of those guys, they're nearly all sold out. That's how you get up top. If you want to be the Tucker Carlsons, or you want to be whoever gets up, the Andrew Tates or anybody,
Madonna.
you have to sell out. Yeah, you have to give a bit of your soul away. Madonna, well, you can tie Madonna to Epstein's enterprise one way, because you could go, well, Madonna, when she was doing her Kabbalah for Books book series, Ghislaine Maxwell and Sarah Kellen turned up for the book reading in New York alongside other famous people like John Leguizamo, Rosie O'Donnell, and other people. And they all boo, and they all hang out together.
Madonna was in Israel at the Eurovision Song Contest, I think it was, wasn't it, when she did that? I'll insert it into this into the edit. The spooky video, in my opinion, saying not everybody's coming to the future, not everybody's going to last. Before that was about 2018, 2019, a lot of symbolism in that, and a lot of people said she's telling us what's to come. Do you remember that one?
I think they all see the same thing. You see, it's a real strange thing about humankind. We don't actually say out loud what we know inside. We have this feeling about things. We can't describe them. We can't put a lot of what we feel into words. This is something that Eric Schmidt said. It's someone who was also part of Jeffrey Epstein's EDGE. Said that in the next few years we'll be able to understand things that we know are true, but we can't verbalize or express in words. So there's like a point in humanity where all of these people who were in control knew this was coming and knew the relevance. You know, the people who take control
Knew
and
what
maintain
was
control.
coming. Just elaborate. Knew what was coming.
Okay, technology changes everything. So all throughout history, it's been about understanding what the next technology is, co-opting it, creating it yourself, evangelizing that the needs for that technology to exist, and then once you're in control of that, you're then looking for the next bit of technology. So an example for this, David Shaw of D.E. Shaw, which at one point had 5 to 10% of the New York Stock Exchange, was D.E. Shaw. It's the route Jeff Bezos got famous through. He left D.E. Shaw and set up Amazon, went to D.E. Shaw's office and told him he was setting him up. And went, ooh, D.E. Shaw was like this factory for these. Haley Miner worked with Jeff Bezos, and he was the guy who went and left and opened download.com, because they already knew all of these platforms were necessary. And so what happened was they already planned it out beforehand, and they started creating the leaders for them. Again, Young Global Leaders programs. These are what they're all about. They're all about finding the people who are going to be in this position. So they knew there was going to be a platform like Amazon. It's going to be big. If you look into the future of what the internet looks like, and they already had Usenet at this point, so they already understood some of the facets of it, then people were going to be buying online. And so if they're buying online, they probably end up going to one big retailer at the end of it, where loads of the other retailers go through, and they created that themselves. They thought it out in the think tank at D.E. Shaw, differently than most other places. And then they found the best person to create that, Jeff Bezos, and gave him the backstory that he got in a station wagon that he bought for $300 off his parents, and he loaded the back with books, and he set up Amazon. Whoa, I'm a salesman. And in the old-fashioned America, in actual fact, he was the vice president of one of the biggest companies on the New York Stock Exchange, and he was placed into that position by an intelligence-led media. You go back, Klaus Schwab went through Kissinger's international seminar at Harvard between 1965 and 1967. That seminar was again a way to put young global leaders in place. And what did they do? In that seminar, Herman Kahn and John Kenneth Galbraith became Schwab's mentors, and the creation of the World Economic Forum happened. But who were they? Herman Kahn is the guy who predicted in the Hudson Institute all the technologies that were going to be invented in the next 200 years. He created something called the year 2000, which most of the technologies still haven't been got to, but they're slowly, one by one, turning green. They're turning it almost there, and then they're there, almost there. They already know what's coming. They already know what's on its way. They already know what they've got to train the future leaders in to keep power and control up top. They need to train them, and they need to train them semi-openly. So you can go to edge.org, and you can go to, for instance, the Edge Masterclass 2008, which is run by Richard Thaler and has just about 12 people in on average in each of the classes learning. People like Elon Musk, Salah Kamanga, Evan Williams, etc. And they're learning how to manipulate you by using behavioral insight nudge units, which are basically psyops units that are allowed, acceptable psyop units that make you make decisions without you knowing you're making those decisions or realizing what it comes from, surreptitiously giving you guidance, forcing you a certain way. And they've employed this nudge technology in multiple ways since, and now that is part of an everyday algorithm that they knew would eventually be existing, and they knew that the people who were in charge of all of these different companies that would have the main algorithms would all have to be in control, so all they have to do is place them, train them up, place them in, and you can see each one of them. I can go through each person who's gone up top, and you can see this is the route in. They were taking up Peter Thiel, Stanford, instantly. Irving Kristol, the neoconservatives are all over him. He sets up Stanford Review. Stanford Review gets funded by Irving Kristol, neoconservatives. They're CIA aligned. Clearly, they're recruiting early on. Later on, he's one of the ones who brings Elon Musk into the fold, the young Elon Musk into the fold. And it goes on like this. There's mentorship. It's leadership, chosen, trained, signed into a deal where you get everything you want. Absolutely everything. You'll be one of the richest men in the world. You'll be one of the most powerful, you can never, ever get off the party boat. Same as in the Epstein case. You can never get off the party boat. You're stuck on the party boat now. So you just do whatever the agency wants, and it makes sense for you because you're building this world of tomorrow that they're building.
Yeah. Brilliant. Lovely. Well, one of the questions actually I asked Jason Burmers when he was on the other week, when we mentioned Epstein, was Epstein, whatever you want to call him. So he was talking about the Zorro Ranch, for example. And it was Prince Andrew was in the news. He's had his title stripped, all that kind of thing. And we touched on how it's clearly a smokescreen because it's not just about Jeffrey Epstein being a paedophile and blah, blah, blah. And he's doing all this stuff at Zorro Ranch. And I said, how many people who are connected, you know, and got all these different names on the black book and all that kind of stuff, the flight logs, actually know the truth about Epstein and what he's doing and what Epstein was, essentially. What do you think about that?
Well, that's part of the ability to control information is control context. The people at the moment, human beings, the average human being who's got the average amount of input, usually from mainstream sources or semi-neo-mainstream plugged up sources, ones that have been paid up to say whatever the masters are going to want them to say anyway. Can both people understand the thesis and the antithesis are both the same controlled? So people really can't get their head around the idea the antithesis is controlled, that the opposite of the thesis is like the most obvious thing to control. People are still duped by that. But it's all about the lack of context. And every one of these people was separated. They've all got little bits. They all got a little bit of a view here, a little bit of a view there. But the people who actually knew the whole what Jeffrey Epstein was, I think that's only been able to be possible since 2019. Since like a load of us started like very early on in 2018 and 19, there was a very small group of people who were really heavily investigating, people like myself, Whitney Webb, other people who were really heavily investigating the Epstein case, not just talking about it, not just, you know, repeating what we're learning from other people, but actually fully investigating it. That, I mean, when you saw the stuff that was actually going on, then you realize, wow, that's much bigger. And each one of these people who would have been involved would have seen only a slight part, some barely anything. Some, you know, when some people say, oh, I didn't even, you know, I can't imagine Al Gore walking into a place and recognizing anything of note about anything. He seems like oblivious, but don't underestimate the man. He's still a tool of what is essentially a digital panopticonic intelligence state that's taken over the world since they shot the president's brain out in 1963 at the very least, and much earlier to an extent. Everybody, you know, watching, telling on everybody, the intelligence, when I say intelligence panopticon, for a lot of people who may not understand what that is, I have to stop for a second and say, there was a prison designed by a guy called Jeremy Bentham in the 1700s, I believe it was. And it had a central guard tower and all of the cells were around the outside. And it was called the panopticon. One guard could watch all cells, and the people in the cells didn't know whether they were being watched. So what they did was they behaved themselves as though they were being watched. Same thing goes in mutually assured destruction in nuclear theory. You know, the thought that everybody's going to end up wiping each other out stops the initial firing happen. So if everybody's got nuclear weapons, it's more beneficial than if only one person's got nuclear weapons, because then that's what they're working on. You know, they're often working on ways, and Herman Cohen was doing this. The same people were working on this, how to manipulate people. Jeffrey Epstein was working on this, how to manipulate people, how to compromise people, how to do it algorithmically. Once it comes down to the point when the algorithm's all in charge, how to manipulate people at an algorithmic level. And that's what the 2008 course was as well. So all of these people have only a little bit of context, and we are only given the bit that will give them the story or let them tell the story that they want to tell, not the story that's true. when you actually look at all of the context to it, everything becomes a lot more obvious. Andrew's role is a lot more obvious. Yeah, Epstein's role a lot more obvious. Ghislaine Maxwell a lot more obvious. It becomes more simple. But there are facets of it that still haven't been uncovered properly. Just because it makes more sense doesn't mean it's all been uncovered yet. There's really big, important, especially child trafficking routes. I think Canada should have an investigation. I think Newfoundland, the island, they stopped there after they flew from Paris on quite a few occasions. So they'd
Would you
fly
say-
from Paris.
Sorry, go on.
Go on.
You go. No, you go.
I was going to say they fly from Paris. They meet Jean-Luc Brunel, who was, of course, recruiting girls through modeling agency MC Squared. Then they would fly from Paris and they would fly to Newfoundland, out in the middle of nowhere in Canada. Out in the middle. The only thing that's close by is an army base, a Canadian army base. That's the only thing that's nearby. Everything is like a sparse island, and then they'd fly back to America. And I think that looks like, if you know what they're doing already and you look at all of the flight logs, that is one of their smuggling routes. Gotta be that they were dropping girls off in Newfoundland and something was going on there. So I think Canada needs to ask questions about Epstein as well, and him and Ghislaine Maxwell's involvement in Montreal as well. They used to go to Montreal quite a lot. Wexner was also involved in Montreal, as was Dershowitz in defending mob
My mum was
bosses.
born in Montreal.
Oh, it's a dark place.
So is Jeffrey Epstein Pizzagate?
Oh wow, that's I mean, there's always ways to spin things, but no, not really. It doesn't seem there's been no direct link, apart from maybe there could be some of the what were those guys? There was a group of people who really that led to the kind of the J6 guys.
The Proud Boys.
No. So people, anyway, a lot of it was just internet rumors and memes that were going around, really.
Oh, like
about
4chan, that kind of thing.
And yeah, but it kind of like it crosses over in so many different ways because people know that's the sort of thing. But what I think what happened there is that sometimes like something gets rumbled that's smaller, gets made into a much bigger thing on purpose, because then once it's discovered that it's not the massive thing that people think it is, it undermines those people who have put it forward as a story. So I do think that, like, I mean, we know from the Rotherham gangs here, that's like 1,200 or 1,400 girls were affected by, and probably boys as well, affected by the Rotherham grooming gangs. Like down on the ground, if you said, oh, that's if you saw one case and said, is that to do with international grooming and child trafficking?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Then yeah, it is. It's connected. There could easily be an element that someone working there or something was happening there. But the problem is someone went in with a gun, shot around, and then it became a central focus point for more ridiculing conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it did. But that's, in my opinion, because that's kind of how I first got into being awake, or whatever you want to call it, in 2016 when the WikiLeaks documents were leaked. And I want to do a special on Pizzagate because I just found that I couldn't remember so much, and that's how the media spun it. And the guy Edgar Madison Welsh or whatever he was called, who went into Comet Ping Pong Pizza and allegedly
it's insane though. The emails are insane. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. The emails are insane. All of it's insane. And the Democratic Party became the most compromised party on earth for a reason. Yeah. It was compromised by their neighbors who wanted political control via an intelligence agency that they had major control of. And it became something where they sent each other things like that, which don't make sense unless it's one thing, then it's terrible. And so there's the essence of it everywhere, because that's how they maintain control. But it doesn't mean that everybody gets this simplistic idea that everybody in power is a child sex predator, where it's like it's a larger percentage than normal, but the majority of those in power are easily persuaded by any pair of tits that comes along. You know, if they're presented with a woman and they got jubblies, like they'll be like, yes, I'll do anything, anything you want immediately. I need it. You know, the men are really like the fact is, men, human beings, are simplistic, really simplistic. It's actually much easier to convince those type of guys and put those kind of guys in power than it is to put the other kind of guys. So it's a mix of all sorts of things, but all comes down to the fact that these people are dirty, nearly all of them. You don't get to that position unless you're sold out.
Johnny?
Right, so I went and did a series called The Black Hand, and it goes back to the 50s, and this was from Whitney, working with Whitney Webb. She messaged me one night. I was in Britain and she was in Chile, and she messaged me, can you check on the Craze ownership of Esmeralda's barn? And so I went away, and it was already like quite late at night. It was like 9-10 o'clock. So I looked into it. Yeah, they owned it. They turned it into a gambling den. They bought it off a selection of people. One of them was this guy, Horace Dibin, blah, 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 blah. And then I kind of like went on and said, yes, you know, the Craze were involved in Esmeralda's barn. But then there was something else that was really interesting, is that I was like, why was it called Esmeralda's barn? And I went back in time just a little bit further, and about 5 years before, a woman called Esmeralda Gulan set it up, and Esmeralda Noel Smith, she was also called, and she was amazing. She was one of the, described as the Katie Merrick of a day. You know, she was one of the most amazing nightclub owners of the West End during one of its peaks as well. And it was also during a period where lots of intelligence agents during the Cold War did dead letter drops and swapped information in the dark rooms of nightclubs. And a lot of the swanky upper class and the actors and etc., they all hung out in these nightclubs, and there was only a few of them. They were actually all owned by different women at this point, and each one of them died one by one over a period of a year and a half. Even Ruth Ellis can be in amongst these lists, and her the person who followed her as well was also Linda Justice, was also found dead soon after. Barbara Knox Marsh, who owned I think it was called the Blue Oyster or Blue Mermaid. She also was found dead. All of them in suspicious circumstances. One of them had a lamp cord wrapped around their neck. Some were gassed, like Esmeralda and a friend of hers. And it looked like they were taking over, and it was because the government, it was the gangsters were taking over on behalf of intelligence. Intelligence were paying gangsters to kill these women and take over the bars and these clubs and these restaurants. And one of the people who took over then, immediately after, who bought Esmeralda's barn, was a guy called Horace Dibin. And Horace Dibin was the man who was the first person to be reported as doing Man in the Mask sex parties. The famous Man in the Mask sex parties from Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut were actually based on Horace Dibin's sex parties, where Mariella Novotny, who was his wife and was about 30 years younger than him and was smuggled out of JFK's bedchamber by the CIA and FBI and was part of the Profumo affair that led down to the downfall of the British government, used to be central to these sex parties that had the Craze sitting around, and other people like the Brinks Matt Robbers, Billy Hill and others sitting around, and all famous people like Beatles, maybe even Jimmy Savile popping in and out, because Jimmy Savile was in around all of these crowds as well at the time. I mean, the fact is that all of these very famous people, they were attracted by Satanism. And Hod Dibin wrote a selection of articles in the People newspaper in the early 60s, just after Mariella Novotny, his wife, had been smuggled out of JFK's bedchamber. He actually mentions it in one line in one of these 4-part series, where he's like, and these terrible rumors about my wife, Mariella. And he set up, Horace Dibin set up these satanic sex parties because he liked to be spanked. He liked to be spanked with a little leather suit on. He had a little like window in the bum area that would come undone, and then people commented on this. You know, it was in many books, etc. But these in compromising these people at the sex events, they had complete control over them. So it was a way to compromise them very early. And it's hard to attract people who have lots of money, who have lots of power. There's nothing to attract them apart from ethereal power, the idea of power. So it used to be these 4-part series he did in the People's Newspaper was about my escape from Satan and Satan at my door. And it's about how he joined the Satanic Brotherhood in the village of Twat. No joke, no word of a lie. Two T's. In Orkneys while he was fighting in the war, and how during a ceremony called the Girl and the Goat, he sold his soul to Satan, and then he had to go and they made this a cool thing to do. And so it didn't matter whether the people who come after are actually worshiping Satan or not. It doesn't even matter if Satan exists. The output was exactly the same. It was a bunch of people who had no way to get any more power and were desperate for power. What do you offer them? You offer them a religion that's not allowed. Something that's not allowed. That's the running theme. Something that's not allowed is what rich people do. Something that's not allowed. So whether it be in smuggling weapons, smuggling children, whether it be worshipping Satan, whether it be doing anything that's the wrong thing to do, that's what certain people, once they get into power, do because they're extremely rich and they got nothing else. Nothing else. What can I do? What will excite a man who has everything, if not the things that you're not allowed to have?
Wow. Yeah, you can remember some names. You can. I think that's highly impressive.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
I do a lot. I do a lot. My articles, I sit down and I go through everything with and nothing goes in unless I can fact check it. But that means I also reread stuff over and over again and over and over again. So it's not like it's not like a trick on ability. It is something that is earned after reading the same names over and over and over
It's
and over and
amazing.
over again.
Yeah. Do you remember that program, A Moment of Truth, that used to be hosted by Cilla Black? Anyway, all the contestants had to memorize stuff, and I think you'd have won it hands down. Just before we go on to the next bit, which we're supposed to be talking about, just to finish off on the what is Epstein stuff, we did get a couple of questions in from our audience. I'll just put one up on here. So, Hardcore Uproar 1992, who says, "What if Epstein never existed? Is just another CGI like Madeleine McCann? Was she a CGI? Just another psyop? Why are the mainstream press so keen on this story?" So what do you say to Hardcore Uproar?
I'd say that I can't ever base my logic on a logical fallacy. And just because something could be CGI doesn't make that proof of it being CGI. Just because something could look like it's fake doesn't mean that that's fake. Anything at this point, we're entering into a stage where absolutely anything can be seen like that, unless you've got really good evidence that points at that. That's not just it's CGI. Then you know someone who's actually was there, programming it, doing it, committing the action, some sort of evidence, traces of the software, of the previous photos, of previous things, of what it's based on. But there's loads of prima facie evidence in the McCann case that McCann existed. Loads of it, everything from birth certificates onwards. And if you use that logical fallacy, then nothing, you could argue the reason why logical fallacies are so useful, then you can't prove them, they're unfalsifiable. So you by saying that constantly all the way down, well, that leads to, but then the birth certificate could be fake, then this could be fake, and then this could be fake, and then my living room's fake, and etc. etc. And where do you stop with it? You can't only apply it to things you want to apply it to. You've got to apply it across the board. And if you apply that across the board, that logic across the board, you'll work out it's a logical fallacy, and you'll have everybody really getting annoyed with you because you'll just be saying. So I don't want to cause friction or anything, but that's a logical fallacy. If people look it up, they'll work out that if you base anything upon a logical fallacy, you're not basing it upon logic.
And how are you going to get through the rest of your life just thinking that everything is fake? I mean, a lot of things are. That's the problem. And
I wish my poop was fake.
I wish it was as well.
Well, my poop.
We've got Emily who said, "What are the best primary sources for Epstein research?"
I'd say definitely mainstream journalists are out. You don't want to even go there. Some of the best sources, and of course, I've already mentioned myself, of course, my work, but also Whitney Webb. I mean, she wrote One Nation Under Blackmail, Volume 1 and 2, and the amount of information in there is incredible. And I can promise you, everything, fine tooth comb with nearly every single bit of information. I saw the sources coming in as they were coming in. I saw certain, I would double check certain chapters for her, and I can promise you that the sources are there as well within the actual, all of these sort of people who come with sources are the best primary sources. Best sources for the research. Primary sources, when it comes to the actual people who were involved in the case, you're in trouble, because everybody who was around Epstein was a liar. So the best sources are all of the information which is factual. Some of the people who've been put up, we talked about it earlier with some, there's a lot of issues I have with anybody who took the Alford plea. Okay, so any person who says, I was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, I'm speaking out about it, but I took the Alford plea, I think that's a really hard thing to come across, to get over. The Alford plea is a plea where basically you say you were part of the enterprise, you broke the law, you helped groom, you helped do all of these things. So it's an admittance of guilt in this. So a lot of the people who were put up in front of you are just not believable, really. This is again a problem that comes with the other people being hidden. So the reason why information and sources from that we garner and gather have to be hidden is because they're not the controlled sources. So a lot of the people who were officially involved in the case, like Michael Wolff, he talks a lot at the moment. He's going out and saying, I know what was going on, or I tried to find out this. He was in business with Epstein through the early noughties. He was in a media conglomerate with Epstein as they put in bids for different people. He was part of Edge. He was part of Jeffrey Epstein funded Edge while it was fully funded by Epstein. So a lot of these people who come out and are the ones who are they don't get put up on a platform if they're actually, Alan Dershowitz, he's a complicated
Alan
one.
Dershowitz, yeah.
Super complicated. Yeah, but very early on, Virginia Giuffre and Maria Farmer put on a little act in about 2019, and they entered in something that was to get Alan Dershowitz taken off the case because he was too powerful for the other side, and they wanted him off the case somehow. So they tried to make it look like he was definitely involved. Like it was a bit tongue-in-cheek. Maria Farmer put in a statement that she once was sitting on the door checking people as they were going into Epstein's property, and Alan Dershowitz went upstairs after a load of little schoolgirls who were dressed up in school uniform, and it sounded a bit like too easy, too ridiculous. And Maria Farmer was doing a lot of that at the time. She was seen in a lot of different stuff. So it's really hard to work out what Alan Dershowitz was doing, because Dershowitz, I don't think necessarily he was like a completely evil child trafficking fiend. I think he was a lawyer working for the agency. I think he was a lawyer working for an agency contract. He used to work for the mob as well. In actual fact, Epstein was sending him around all over the place on his plane, so he was getting to use his plane like that. I think that was part of what the enterprise was. But not everybody saw everything that was going on. Now, another thing that is a problem, for instance, with the accusations against Dershowitz, which would come entangled, is Virginia Giuffre herself said directly that Alan Dershowitz she had slept with him, etc. She gave a statement, and then she rescinded that statement. That statement came with a lot of detail. It came with a lot of detail, and then she said, she might have misremembered. That undermined the entire case, and that's the moment where she was dead. In my opinion, that's the moment, whether it was on purpose or whether it was herself.
Yeah.
That was the moment where she undermined the entire case. That's what I think a lot of these people want to make them into angels, but a lot of these girls were working in when they got old enough, were still working for an enterprise which was trafficking children.
I see. Well, that picture, the famous picture in Knightsbridge or wherever it is of Prince Andrew and Ghislaine, she was smiling her head off on that.
Well, of course, you're having a great time. You're hanging around. Listen, I fucking hell, man. People forget what it's like to be 17. I mean, if I was 17, I think that picture is taken when she's 17 years old. If I remember correctly, she's 17. So in Britain, officially in Britain, we would know that the illegal age of consent is 16 in Britain. So it wouldn't necessarily be illegal, but because she had been brought in, trafficked from overseas, and that happened there, that means Andrew was breaking a law. But it's much more complex to prosecute, and no one's going to want to prosecute the prince. Why would they want to prosecute the prince? All of it is very obvious. Why wouldn't you be having
prince?
Yeah, when I was 19, I was working in the Hilton Hotel, and I had a load of experiences, and I saw loads of different things. And from the first moment I walked in the door, the interview, the bosses said to me, "What happens if a guest wants a prostitute?" And I was like, "Send him to a red light district or a brothel." And they were like, "No, you get him. You arrange a prostitute. You bring the prostitute in. You make sure she's all right. You take her upstairs. You introduce. You make sure the money's handed over. You offer to keep the money. You go back downstairs. You wait for an hour. You go up. You check on them. Then once they're finished, you bring her back down. You sit her down, have a cup of tea with her, talk about the weather while you wait for her taxi, and then you make sure you put in the taxi like she's an everyday regular guest." That was the first response to any question in any job interview I had out the door. And I can tell you, my face went from like this to like, "I want the job. This sounds like nuts. I'm going to see crazy stuff."
Lodge, do you?
No, well, no, you see much worse. I worked in a travel lodge. Dude, while I was writing my first, after I'd published my first Epstein cases, during the time, when I published the Junkerman article, the first Junkerman article in July 2019, I was working on a reception desk of a 2-star travel lodge. I was typing behind the desk, and I was doing all my research behind the desk while I was checking people in, cleaning rooms, and doing all the other stuff. And I was working there until December 2020, from about 2016. You see every hotel. You see stuff go on. Of course you do. But being 17 years old, just say, being 17 years old, you're going to be having a really good time, and you're going to love all of this indulgence. You get everything all of the time. So I think people, they have this idea of, "Oh my God, this is terrible." Yes, it was loads of fucking terrible. There was loads of terrible. What was happening? He was recruiting 16, 17, and 18-year-old girls to go and recruit 13, 14, and 15-year-old girls. And they would love to get those girls up there, because then they wouldn't have to do what he wanted them to do. So there's masses of coercion, masses of lack of consent. They're tricked into thinking it's a normal role into a business. That's one of the things that takes away the ability for one of these girls to consent. So I think there's so many different points where we look at it in a way that's, it's like we're almost strictly religious, but it's at the end of the day, once you get to 17, 18, 19, you're like, show me experience, show me everything, let me see everything. And I tell you, I saw some things. I talked about the Tim Westwood case in loads of different on loads of different platforms, and that's the same thing, man. I saw a line of teenage girls lining up, queuing up. Why didn't I do anything? I went down and told my manager. What did my manager do? Nothing. This for them, they were like, "Oh, Johnny said something." They don't give it. What the reality of how these things work is that no one wants a hard time. No one wants to face the censor. No one wants to face the law. No one wants to face consequences. So everybody pretends they're not involved. And in that way, they're complicit with everything that happens.
Just to finish off on what Emily asked, because I am curious, have you asked ChatGPT and other AI models questions that you know the answer to about the Epstein stuff? Is that a place? Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind
definitely
of
have.
response do you get?
Well, it's really, I think it's getting personalized. I think AI is now becoming more and more personalized. So if I go on my own account and I talk about Youngkerman, for instance, they will mention my name. If I go on another account, they won't mention my name. So it's like they're giving you only a certain amount of information, but still they'll give you the official narrative, the official story. They won't. Again, I'll say something to it, then I'll correct it, and then it'll say, okay, I see the evidence you're using, that's factual, etc. But they won't repeat that to anybody else. They'll only say it to me. And so I believe that AI is telling me what I want it to know, but it doesn't actually tell anybody else. So it's all a scam anyway, of course.
Yeah, of course, everything is.
It's useful. Hey, AI is extremely useful for certain administrative functions. As soon as anything that's got ethics or morals attached, you don't want it anywhere in your life. There's got to be. It can do a load of different jobs. It's going to be really useful, and everybody's going to adopt it. But that doesn't mean, again, you don't want to end up in a logical fallacy, like a false dilemma fallacy. That doesn't mean that you have to burn everything or you have to have a massive digital panopticon. It just means that you can learn to use AI in a way that's good, but they are building up that control structure behind us, and that control structure is ultra personalized. And so the knowledge I ask of AI will already know what answers to give me personally.
This is definitely, if you will come back and we can talk about that whole topic, because we've had conversation before. I remember you saying that you're going to start writing everything down rather than using computers and things like that. Because anyway, we will do that another day. Part 2 coming up. But just funnily enough, in terms of ChatGPT and all the rest of it being politically correct or not giving you the truth, I asked it to draw. Trying to make a poster for something, long story, but and I said, please can you draw a cartoon of a Chinese person saying whatever, blah blah blah, and it came back to say that it was against their community guidelines or something like that, something that it's too racist. So I replied and I said, I find that really offensive because I am a Chinese person. It did it.
That's just the way.
It apologized to me and did it. Yeah.
I've seen. I have to say though, I do host a show called Truth Bomb where I put 2 members of the independent media up against AI's official narrative, so you get to see the official narrative. But there was one occasion on the James Delingpole episode where the first question was, there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump in 2024, and ChatGPT said no, there wasn't. One of the chat bots anyway, and it threw him straight away. It made him realize that you're going to get the whatever the AI wants you to think rather than anything else.
Interesting.
Too true.
Shall we get into the nitty gritty? I think the names come up a couple of times, but without context. So shall we do it?
Oh, there she is, Nicole Youngkerman. So Nicole Youngkerman is the Epstein associate nobody's talking about, or at least that's what the article I released in July 2019 was entitled. And from the moment I released that, I rumbled something that was really, really much bigger. Obviously, she came down on me like a sack of bricks. By 2019, beginning of 2020, I had my first injunction from interim injunction from a Berlin court. Now, another 5 of these interim injunctions would be placed against me. I believe 5 in total. And they are meant to lead to a defamation case in court. And of course, no defamation case ever comes. Instead, what she does is she does this interim injunction in a German Berlin regional court. She shows it to YouTube, Substack, Rumble, whoever, and says, look, we got this injunction against him, and you've got to delete his videos or geo-block them. And so then they automatically geo-block or delete my videos on behalf of an interim injunction without even checking what type of injunction it is, even asking for it. And this has gone on since 2019. So from 2019, I was getting, and very early on, about 2020, I got lots of messages from people, including microtaskers they were paid to note down where I was mentioned and to have it taken delisted from Google. So slowly they were delisting almost everything I did from Google. So if I did any articles about anything, they would come off the listing straight away. So people just wouldn't be able to find me. So I was being hidden from there. I was obviously I was receiving defamation takedowns from YouTube as well. And this lady is extremely powerful. Okay, so she denies this, but the evidence is severe. But she was in 2019 definitely in business with Jeffrey Epstein, Peter Thiel, and Ehud Barak, the 10th Prime Minister of Israel, in a company called Carbine 911. I know this because not only is the company information freely available with her names listed, but she's also was on the website, Carbine 911 website, on the board of directors alongside Ehud Barak. Pinchas Bukras used to be the head of Unit 8200 company. Amir Elikai, who recently in the Epstein files releases an email talking about Amir Elikai from Junkerman to Epstein and Ehud Barak has already come out. She's still denying any of that actually happened. She's not. She's denying that she got on the Lolita Express 3 times, even though her name is on there 3 times, and you can trace it. And 2 of the times are ones that I investigated where she comes to Britain. She flies from France to Britain at the end of August, stays for the 1st and leaves on the 2nd of September. And she stays in a place called Foxcote House, which is owned by Abigail Wexner, Les Wexner's wife. And there I found someone who saw that they met her, Epstein, and another model woman met with 2 sitting US senators. I haven't been able to flush out who those senators are yet, but still, it was very interesting. She was becoming part of the UK NHS when I first started reporting on it. She was in something called the UK Health Tech Advisory Board, which was set up by Matt Hancock, and was looking at how to incorporate digital technology into the NHS. Some of the people on there were also related to Nicole Junkerman's companies, and she is also Countess Brichetti Peretti after marrying into Ferdinando Brichetti Peretti in Italy. He's the head of the API oil company and one of the richest men in Italy. He's also a Knight of Malta, and one of obviously the black nobility. Her legal advisor, NJF Capital, was formerly the legal advisor to Lord Jacob Rothschild. So obviously she's pretty much a bigwig. But Nicole Junkerman has been on my case since I wrote 3 articles that document all of her associations with Epstein. When she actually contacts the platforms, she usually tries to have takedowns based on DMCA, like I used the different images in the articles, and she tries to use those. I've actually seen the PDFs they send to these companies, and I don't use any of the images in the articles as they stand today. So she has no way, but they still enter it in, say, look, he's using these images, and the companies don't even check whether those images are in there, and they just take them down anyway, because they will do whatever. And it's called strategic litigation against public participation, SLAP, and there's loads of anti-SLAP laws coming in now. So I'm going in against Junkerman. That's the only thing I can do, because she's been heavily censoring me for 6 years, and she is super uber powerful. And so I am going to use every legal mechanism available to me to fight back. Her NJF Capital is actually based in London. So a lot of this stuff has been done in Britain, and I've recently put in a subject access request for all data to her company. And 2 weeks ago, I filed with them a letter before action, warning them that if they didn't stop everything and all the censorship, then they would I would take it further. They have continued. So even though that they couldn't, recently 4 of my Substack articles got pulled down based on their false information, which I've seen him for and was able to dispute. Eventually, those got put back up. It took longer than necessarily, but eventually Substack put them back up. Same day, Substack put a geo block in Germany on 6 of her posts. There's currently about 10, 15, I think it's about 15 YouTube videos that have defamation blocks, geo blocks, so people in Britain, America, France, Germany can't see my work about her on the Epstein case. She's gone out of her way to delete me from history in many different ways by having me delisted online. So I'm backed into a corner. I got no other opportunity but to start fighting the censors, because I am being censored everywhere. And Nicole Youngkerman she will do some action if you put this up on YouTube. So there will be some geo blocking at some point, probably at this point in Germany, because like I say, when I was dealing with the Substack stuff, they actually I did a data request to them, and they actually sent me all of the information they had been sending them, and I was able to inform all of the other people that within that. I had one on my podcast the other day. I was able to inform them. It turned out most of their banning was for mentioning my name, and that's it. There's constantly people who are telling me that this is happening, and of course people then are less keen to work on you and work with you. And when you were talking about Jason Bamas at the beginning and seeing me on Jason Bamas, listen, back in 2019, yeah, I know, I always call him Bamas. He's not going to get away from it. I know. I've known him for 6 years. I love the boy, but I'm always going to call him Bamas. We're talking about that. Well, the first 3 interviews I did with him were all on Youngkerman. They were all taken down. They're all no longer available. Even when he got his channel back, those ones didn't come. They all got defamation takedowns and full takedowns. So, and may have led to his first channel being deleted as well, because it was 3 of them fairly quickly. She does that. I've been keeping all of the evidence, because I'm going to take it to court. There's nothing else for it. It's clear what she's done. She has clearly broken loads of laws. They can't have anyone legal deal with me, because if they do, then those people can have their legal licenses taken away from them for vexatious litigation. So I think they know that. That's why all of the people who deal with me are these non-legal people at her firm. And so they make loads of mistakes.
Will you represent yourself? Because your memory, you know what you're talking about, don't you?
Maybe, but it depends. Some things you don't need necessarily a court case. So I'm starting off right at the start. So I'm someone who doesn't have what she has. She has lots of money, lots of power, lots of influence. There's a certain amount of things I can do at a bottom rung with basically no money to start getting discovery on the record and start getting things on the record. Then I need to find some form of backing if I want to take a different type of case against her. But there's about 10 different legal options I can do that are relatively inexpensive that can lead me to that the bigger place. So I have to work from the bottom and work my way up. So I want to document this as I go. I want to try and make sure that people understand what SLAP is strategic litigation against public participation. It's evil, man. Loads of people say, why do you do what you do? And I can't even afford to live, man. I can't. It gets worse and worse as you go. It's just like life is just continuously hard, and you're continuously being like ignored by certain people and looked over by people because you're constantly doing something that is not good for them upstairs, and that's what I've got to keep doing. So I believe something will give eventually, and then I want to go through a process. And I want to go, there's a lot of injustice. I've had to go through a lot of injustice to get to the point where I fight against injustice. Everybody has to go through a lot before so then I want to go through one by one, sort out all of the issues, do it legally, do it properly, do it strategically and cleverly. So let's see where that goes on. But I mean, she's not the only person who's currently censoring me in the UK. There's someone else who's censoring me in the UK right now, and I think we should probably talk about him quickly if we can. Yep. So David Sullivan, he's one of the owners of West Ham Football Club. He was the pawn king. He is a pawn king of the UK. He owned the Sunday Sport, the Daily Sport. He owned Babe Station or shares in it. Loads of other things. He used to make porn movies back in the day, back in the 70s, etc. Now, I've been working with people involved in the case, some alleged victims as well, behind the scenes for a little bit of time now. Doing the job that I do and reporting on the stuff that no one else wants to talk about or no one reports on means that those people who haven't got anyone to tell their story come to me, find me and say, hey, I need your help. And that's what happened. And we went, I then go away and look at something and then decide whether I can be any use to it at all. This was something where it had fundamentally, it was like biblical signs that I should be working on this. It was almost biblical. It was crazy. So let me start off very quickly and explain. There's many allegations against David Sullivan. David Sullivan has been accused of a certain type of tactic or strategy. Lots of men, including sex offenders, take up certain strategies and techniques to get themselves a partner or a mate. In actual fact, there's three main ways that men find a partner. One is to date them, have babies, and be with them, supply love and kindness or whatever, or support for them. The other is to have multiple babies with multiple women. That's one of the mating strategies. And the other one is to abuse and to do all the bad things and take whatever you want. He's being accused and there's lots of prima facie evidence, again, lots of good evidence that backs this up. He used to put adverts in different newspapers, different magazines, asking for a PA. He would want a smart, attractive, clever girl who could do all of his PA stuff. And then he would invite them to an interview at his mansion. They would turn up, and then they would be or feel obliged by the fact he was in a gown and tell them that he wanted to now have sex with them, and they should take off their clothes immediately. And then also within the story is sometimes he would say, you are going to have continue having sexual relations with me continuously onwards from that. And that was a way for him to mate with women. That was a way for him to have sex and get girls. And that, of course, raises masses of questions about consent, because consent is something that needs to be clear, and that is definitely not clear, because he's tricked and deceived girls to come. Now, I've seen lots of the different adverts saying he used to go by the name Don Bell sometimes, so that's another count where consent is taken away. And then some of the actual allegations are from 15-year-old girls, and some of it is also violent conduct. And there is a systematic nature to it. So again, I say these are allegations, but he is being hidden at the moment. They're not allowing you to see anything. The police have been taking no further action each time. There is something going on behind the scenes that may lead to some sort of program coming out on the ineffective BBC eventually. But right at the moment, there's cover-ups galore. And so what happened recently, it got complicated because I released that article, and David Sullivan came after me because basically he said by reporting on that, you could work out other things about things I'm not allowed to report on. I had purposely not reported on certain aspects because there had been another case happening. But once he'd done that, then I have to defend myself in some way. He's taken down about 6 or 7, 8, 9 maybe of my geo-blocked in the UK on X. So X is given in to him. I've replied to X. I've described it as strategic litigation because really, if I've broken some sort of court order, I'll just say this: if I've broken some sort of court order, then the judge should be told, and I should be arrested. I should be arrested because I would have broken contempt of court. I would be in contempt of court, and the police would come around my house and they would arrest me and they would take me in for questioning and they would charge me with a crime. That hasn't happened. Now, why has that not happened when I'm clearly saying out loud that is something which would lead to something called jigsaw identification? It's because the court order that stops me talking about this case is undermined itself by the fact that the details in the case are already in the public domain. If I go to Grok and type in, why are 5 of Johnny Vedmore's posts on X censored? They'll tell you that there's an anonymity order in a high court case that's focused in on David Sullivan, and they'll tell you all of the details. It's Grok.
Wow.
AI will tell you the entire court order. So he's hiding my videos and my posts from X, and X are agreeing to that. At the same time, X is allowed to tell people. Now, competition laws, can you imagine competition laws? Can you imagine having an anonymity order for something that's in the public domain? Can you imagine being a judge, not only a judge, can you imagine being a high court judge and saying, I'm giving this an anonymity order, even though the information is already in the public domain? That, for me, that is contempt of court. I would say that is so if I'm committing contempt, then what should happen is that the police should get involved, arrest me. So I went to the police station and I went and handed myself in and I said, hey, I am definitely committing a crime. Apparently, I've been told by this, but I think it's not a crime. But that must mean there's an arrest warrant out for me because they've taken these posts down. So it must be the police who are getting in contact with them. But no, X will take it down. Any old person can contact X and say, hey, this post, it goes against the court order. They won't check a court order. They won't bother actually verifying anything. They won't ask for the court order. X will just say, okay, we'll ban it. And then you've got no ability to respond to X at all.
No appeal button or anything, no?
There's no appeal button. We've been told you're doing something against the court order, so we're geo-blocking your post in the UK. No, I would say, if I'm breaking a court order, tell the court. Now, the reason why they can't tell the court, because the judge would have to look at the case and clearly would have to actually read what I'm saying. And what I'm saying in all of the posts that apparently the evidence of me breaking a court order is that I'm saying this information is already in the public domain, and the court order itself says it doesn't cover anything that's already in the public domain. So the court order itself says that it doesn't cover it. But X is still pulling it down. But the judge, if they looked at that, the judge would have to raise the anonymity order, meaning BBC would be able to name David Sullivan, and the whole thing would be over. Straight away. So if I'm in contempt of court, why has no police come round and arrested me yet? Please do so. Please arrest me for contempt of court for breaking a court order. Let's go and test that court order out, because I think you'll find all the information is available on Grok. So I released an article where I didn't break the court order. I just reported on what Grok was saying, and Grok was telling everybody out loud that there was an anonymity order on David Sullivan's case, and for which reason it must be undermined. It cannot be in the public domain and anonymous at the same time. That is legally nuts. So please, Mr. Judge, come to me, arrest me, take me away. I know.
So we haven't got that long left, Johnny, but please do a part 2 with me, please. But what, in terms of the David Sullivan situation, what is the next step, do you think, in terms of exposing this?
I think the first part has to not let those in power and the media in power create the narrative themselves. As soon as it's a massive tower of cards, it's all going to fall just as soon as you've got a couple more people who are coming out, and there's lots of victims, alleged victims out there, in my opinion, there's many more than what people think. If the evidence and what has been alleged is true, and I've seen the systematic nature, and like I say, there's lots of evidence points all at one thing. An investigation needs to happen. The police are avoiding that. As soon as that opens up, that's going to lead down all different types of roads. It needs to happen very quick. He's a very old guy.
Yeah.
One of the things that needs to happen is West Ham. West Ham need to understand, the football club itself need to understand, they've just been given a safeguarding award from White Ribbon UK, the first ever Premier League club in history to get given a safeguarding award while David Sullivan owns the place. That is nuts. West Ham's going to have a reckoning, and it's the fans themselves who can do something about this. And a lot of them I know a lot of them are afraid. So I think the next step is the fans rising up. They're the ones who have all of the power at the club, as in any football club. It needs to happen.
Is there anything that you can encourage the viewers of this program to do for this?
Well, I would say talk about David Sullivan out loud. I mean, I promise you, there's a lot of people who are going to be, it's going to be the first time they're hearing his name. Really, a lot of people, first time, people need to hear the name. And then once they realize it's that person, it'll all come tumbling down. It's just got people really speak about it. Speak about these things, Don't leave me alone in the dark speaking about these things. Come up with me, have a conversation. Everybody get involved. Everybody say something about it, and eventually these things come tumbling down.
I will put a link to the article in the comments or in the description as well. So, yay, Johnny! Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me. I love it. I love it. I miss you.
Oh, ditto. We used to work together at TNT, for people who didn't know. I got the odd guest, didn't I? And introduced
you were always
amazing
wonderful.
People.
Yeah,
Like
you're always
Daddy
wonderful.
Dragon.
Oh my God, he's wonderful. Graham H. Moore is one of my favourite humans around. I love him.
Yeah. Oh, great. What I've been doing in the previous episodes is finishing off with something a little bit different. So I've found one of your pastimes that people might not know about is that you're an auditor.
Oh, yeah.
So I've scoured some clips really quickly. So I will play a little bit of an audit that you've done, and we'll see you next time on Charlotte's Web, Johnny.
Bye.
See ya.
I am going to go over and talk to the police now and see what they're up to. Probably have to drop off some stuff first. Doesn't look like there's a drone about anymore. Did you see that drone earlier on, gentlemen? Oh, there was a drone hanging around over here. I was wondering, it's probably actually one of the smokers, You know how it goes. We smokers love our toys. Well, anyway, so I'm going to go and speak to the police. That sounds like a good idea. And of course, here we are. It's already started. We're at Green Pride, and over there's Blue Pride. I don't mean it. There they are looking, having a conversation with the organizers. I think they're saying that the music's too loud. They could be saying anything though, couldn't they? I talked to the guy with the Pink Floyd t-shirt on there. He's a very nice guy. And it's very interesting. They look like they're having a little discussion. So probably... So as you see, these are proper coppers, not just PCSOs. Oh, so they're having them turn the music off. Hey, how's it doing policing such an event? Is it all right? Do you just have nice conversations?
Yeah, mostly.
Yeah? Do you think that reaction for asking to turn down, they weren't very loud?
I'm not going to talk to you about it.
Okay, can you identify
Identify what?
yourself? You with...
April Alpha 128, I'm a police officer based at Brighton.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
Have a good day.
So how
Follow me with the camera.
it is public. It is public.
Not in my face. You can
I'm not. You just pushed me. I'm just walking.
Well, I could actually come closer to you. You know that because I'm recording in public and I'm a police auditor. So I'm at a festival where people are having a little good time and it's a really, really nice organized event. And you've just been rude to me and just pushed me and touched me. I wasn't that close. You had to walk up to me and push me with your hand, which seems a bit silly because you're being recorded on camera. So the event now means that if I go to court and say, hey, this lady pushed me in an event where I wasn't doing anything and I was legally allowed to do this, I don't have to prove anything. The police have to prove that you have the right to walk towards me and push me with your hand when I'm not coming towards you. I was just standing asking you a question. So I like the police. I like to have good interactions with the police. I do a lot of police auditing on my channel. So telling someone that I shouldn't be like recording them when I'm just asking you nice questions. Did I ask you anything bad there at all? I think I just asked you nice questions. And that's usually the way you get and what we get with the police, isn't it? I mean, it's a really nice event. As I've seen, I've walked around there, I've talked to all of these people. They're really nice people. And these police are being antagonizing, in my opinion. They got 2 cars out there, they're nice cars as well, paid for by taxpayers' money. I mean, hiya. How are you, gents? You all right? How's life? Good, good. How's life? Good. Yeah, I was just trying to talk to him and she got a little bit funny about me recording in public, and I'm a police auditor, so I tend to say to people, you know, especially police, I'm allowed to record in public, that's part of the thing. And oh, do you? Oh, my name's oh, can I do an impression? My name's AB. I'm AB. No, I'm AB. This is AB. I'm auditing Britain. I am, man. I am 100%. Yeah, no, I'm not. Of course, I'm not. I'm only playing. It was quite good though. It wasn't bad. What about oh, how's the good Yorkshire accent so I can live free? I could be live free. Oh, or Marty Blackborough. I could be Marty Blackborough with my drone, getting it around there like, oh look, I'm Marty Blackborough, but I'm not really Marty Blackborough.
That was my question. Who was one that keeps flying around?
Yeah, that's Marty Blackborough, man. He's a bit of a dude. He's a nice guy. He's from a rough area up north. You know how these guys are. They're a lot of the time they've had a little bit of interaction with the police, which has been negative.
Yeah.
And they want some form of justice. They want to be able to talk to the police. They want to be able to form a relationship that suits both of them. You know, it's a nice way to work within the community. Unfortunately, like sometimes the police are abrasive with the public, and sometimes the public are abrasive with the